All human beings love to suffer. One of the greatest competitions between humans is who has suffered the most. The reason people love to suffer is that it makes them feel right. The reason people love to suffer is that it proves how deeply they feel. You could not possibly know the depth of my suffering, but you could at least try. That's one of my favorite quotes about suffering in an acting book of all things, Michael Shurtleff's Audition. Talk about nailing human nature, am I right? Many people choose to suffer because it makes them feel important. I've known many people in my life who directly chose to suffer because it got them attention. And let's face it, very often victims get attention. But attention can make you feel good. But the problem with that is if you're always making yourself a victim, then you can never truly develop yourself as an individual, as a human being, and move forwards. You're entrenching yourself in victimhood. So if you can't move forwards and you can't better yourself, well, then you can't better and help other people either. Many people choose to suffer because it becomes a habit. For example, I did. I got into the habit of depression. I got used to it, and then dare I say, I even started craving the depression because that's what became familiar to me. And if that's what becomes familiar to you, you can get locked into a cycle, you can get locked into a habit of suffering, and at that point it becomes very familiar and can be very difficult to break that cycle. You may want to read Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural to learn how to break that cycle. Many people choose to suffer because it's learned helplessness. That one's very tragic. For example, if someone grows up in an abusive household, they have to endure that as a child and as a teenager until they can finally grow up and get out of that environment. But even after regaining control over their life, they're out of that environment and they now have control over their lives. But through the repetition, through the patterns, because our brains are pattern-making machines, our brains expect that suffering to just continue on. And then the expectation effect kicks in. You expect to keep suffering. So, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, it can often keep happening long after control's been regained in their life. Yes, some people choose to suffer because it's learned helplessness. Some people choose to suffer because it's their identity, whether it was learned helplessness or something that they unknowingly chose to adopt. Now, I want to acknowledge that pain is real and suffering is real, but some people refuse to let go of that suffering. Now, with this also comes a degree of responsibility, that being knowing what you're doing and not knowing what you're doing. For the longest time, I chose to suffer, but I also didn't really know what I was doing. But once I was made aware of it, once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. Once I became aware of it, it became my responsibility to no longer choose suffering from that point onwards. Suffering is always going to find you. But in the meantime, be careful that you're not suffering on purpose. My advice, do not choose to suffer.